The fluorescent lights of Omnicorp hummed, a constant irritating drone that mirrored Elias Thorne's internal anxiety. He straightened his tie, the silk a cold comfort against his clammy skin. 12 years he'd poured into this company, starting in the mailroom and clawing his way up to senior project manager. 12 years of late nights, missed birthdays, and countless sacrifices, all culminating in a reputation for unparalleled efficiency and innovation. But today felt different. Today the air crackled with a nervous energy he couldn't quite place. He'd heard the rumors, of course, whispers of a new VP of operations, a young hotshot named Julian Vance, fresh out of Wharton and rumored to be utterly ruthless. Nepotism, everyone muttered. Vance's father was a major shareholder. Elias dismissed it as office gossip. He was too valuable to be touched. His projects consistently exceeded expectations, his team was fiercely loyal, and his track record was impeccable. He was, in his own quiet way, the backbone of Omnicorp's operational success. Then Vance arrived. He swept through the office like a hurricane in a tailored suit, his eyes scanning the landscape with an unsettling mixture of arrogance and disdain. Meetings were called, procedures questioned, and long-standing systems suddenly deemed antiquated and inefficient. Elias initially tried to be helpful, offering suggestions based on his years of experience, gently pointing out potential pitfalls in Vance's sweeping changes. He quickly learned that Vance wasn't interested in advice. He was interested in control. He wanted to dismantle, rebuild, and claim the credit for everything. Elias became a target. His projects were scrutinized with microscopic intensity. His team members were subtly encouraged to undermine him, and his opinions were consistently dismissed, often with a condescending smirk and a patronizing pat on the arm. The humiliation was constant, a slow, insidious erosion of his confidence and self-worth. He started sleeping poorly, his stomach churning with anxiety. He could feel the respect of his team slowly slipping away, replaced by a cautious pity. The breaking point came during a crucial presentation to a major client. Elias had spent weeks preparing, meticulously crafting a strategy that would secure a lucrative long-term contract. Vance, however, decided to spice things up at the last minute, overriding Elias's carefully planned presentation with a series of ill-conceived, untested ideas. The presentation was a disaster. The client was visibly unimpressed, and the meeting ended with a frosty exchange and a palpable sense of disappointment. Back in the office, Vance summoned Elias to his gleaming minimalist office. "Elias," Vance said, his voice dripping with false concern, "I'm afraid we need to talk about your performance. It seems you're not quite adapting to the new direction we're taking here at Omnicorp." Elias felt a cold dread wash over him. He knew what was coming. "I'm afraid," Vance continued, his eyes devoid of empathy, "that we're going to have to let you go. Your services are no longer required." He slid a pink slip across the polished desk. The words hit Elias like a physical blow. 12 years, gone, just like that. Humiliated, dismissed, and discarded like a broken machine. He stared at the termination notice, his hands trembling. He wanted to scream, to rage, to tear the room apart, but he didn't. He simply nodded, picked up the notice, and walked out, his head held high but his heart shattered. He knew with a chilling certainty that this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. He wouldn't let Vance win. He would make him pay. He just needed a plan, and he already had the seeds of one planted in his mind. He had anticipated this possibility, had secretly been documenting Vance's disastrous decisions and blatant incompetence. He just needed to figure out how to use it. Resumo temático. Profissional exemplar é humilhado e injustamente demitido por novo líder arrogante, mas utiliza seu conhecimento e preparo prévio para orquestrar uma reviravolta que expõe a incompetência do novo líder e o leva a ascender a uma posição ainda maior. Stepping out of Vance's sterile office felt like emerging from a coffin. The hum of the fluorescent lights, which had once been a mere annoyance, now felt like a mocking symphony. He walked to his desk, the eyes of his team, once filled with respect, now clouded with pity and fear, burning into his back. He cleared his desk with mechanical precision, packing away the framed photos of his daughter's graduation and his wife's beaming smile. Each item was a tiny stab of pain, a reminder of the life he had built, the security he had taken for granted. As he reached the elevator, he saw Sarah, his most trusted team member, hurrying towards him. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with a mixture of concern and defiance. "Elias, I'm so sorry," she whispered, her voice trembling. This is wrong. We all know what you've done for this company." Elias forced a weak smile. "It's okay, Sarah. It is what it is." "No, it's not. He's already making a mess of things. The client is furious. They called demanding to speak with you. Vance is trying to smooth things over, but he's just making it worse." worse. Her voice was rising with anger. "He doesn't know what he's doing. He's going to ruin everything." Elias placed a hand on her arm, his touch surprisingly steady. "Sarah, listen to me. Don't do anything rash. Keep your head down. Just observe and document everything." He subtly emphasized the word document. He knew Sarah. She was meticulous, organized, and fiercely loyal. She would understand. The elevator doors opened and Elias stepped inside, turning back to face Sarah one last time. "Thank you," he said, his voice barely audible above the hum of the elevator. The doors closed, leaving Sarah standing there, a solitary figure of defiance in the corporate landscape. As the elevator descended, Elias pulled out his phone. He had one call to make, a call he had been preparing for months. He scrolled through his contacts and found the name Marcus Bellwether, Bellwether Consulting. Marcus was a notorious corporate fixer, a man who specialized in uncovering corruption and exposing incompetence. He was expensive, ruthless, and incredibly effective. "Marcus," Elias said, his voice calm and controlled, "I need your help, and I think I have something that will interest you." He spent the next hour laying out the situation, detailing Vance's disastrous decisions, his blatant disregard for established procedures, and his blatant incompetence. He carefully omitted any mention of his own dismissal, focusing instead on the potential damage Vance was inflicting on Omnicorp. He painted a picture of a company on the brink of collapse, a company ripe for a hostile takeover. Marcus listened in silence, occasionally interjecting with a sharp, probing question. When Elias finished, there was a long pause. "Interesting," Marcus said finally, his voice low and gravelly. "Very interesting indeed. Send me everything you have. Every document, every email, every scrap of paper. And Elias, stay quiet, let me work my magic." Elias hung up the phone, a sliver of hope flickering in his chest. He knew that Marcus was a dangerous man, but he was also a man who got results. He had set the wheels in motion. Now all he had to do was wait and prepare, because he knew that this was just the beginning of a long and complicated game. He had a feeling that Julian Vance was about to learn a very painful lesson about the dangers of underestimating the quiet man in the corner. He smiled, a genuine smile this time, the first one he'd felt in weeks. The humiliation was gone, replaced by a cold, burning determination. He would not be defeated, he would rise. Resumo temático. Profissional exemplar é humilhado e injustamente demitido por novo líder arrogante, mas utiliza seu conhecimento e preparo prévio para orquestrar uma reviravolta que expõe a incompetência do novo líder e o leva a ascender a uma posição ainda maior. The following weeks were an exercise in patience, a tightrope walk over a chasm of anxiety and simmering rage. Elias focused on the mundane, long walks in the park, spending time with his family, things he had neglected during his Omnicorp tenure. He avoided the news, avoided LinkedIn, avoided anything that might remind him of his former life. But the silence was deafening. He knew Marcus was working, but the lack of communication was agonizing. Then, one evening, his phone rang. It was an unknown number. He hesitated, then answered. "Elias Thorne," a crisp, authoritative voice inquired. "Speaking. This is Evelyn Reed, legal counsel for Bellwether Consulting. Mr. Bellwether requires your presence at Omnicorp tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. sharp. Be prepared to answer questions." The line went dead. Elias stared at his phone, his heart pounding. He knew what this meant. The game was on. The next morning, Elias arrived at Omnicorp, feeling a strange mix of dread and exhilaration. The security guard, a man who had always greeted him with a friendly nod, now looked at him with suspicion. He was escorted to a conference room on the executive floor, a room he had only been in a handful of times during his entire career. Inside, the atmosphere was thick with tension. Julian Vance sat at the head of the table, his face pale and drawn. Around him were several unfamiliar faces, all impeccably dressed and radiating an air of quiet power. Marcus Bellwether sat to Vance's right, his eyes sharp and unwavering. "Elias," Vance said, his voice strained, "what is the meaning of this?" Elias ignored him, focusing his attention on Marcus. "You wanted to see me, Mr. Bellwether." Marcus nodded. "Mr. Thorne, we've been conducting an internal investigation into recent operational changes at Omnicorp, and we've uncovered some concerning information that suggests a pattern of mismanagement and potential malfeasance." He paused, his gaze sweeping across the room. "Mr. Vance, perhaps you could shed some light on these matters," Vance stammered, his carefully constructed facade of confidence crumbling before Elias's eyes. I don't know what you're talking about," Marcus smiled, a cold, predatory smile. "Perhaps these documents will jog your memory." He gestured to Evelyn Reed, who distributed a stack of papers to everyone in the room. The papers contained detailed accounts of Vance's disastrous decisions, complete with emails, memos, and financial projections. The evidence was damning. As the room buzzed with whispers and shocked gasps, Marcus turned to Elias. "Mr. Thorne, you were previously senior project manager at Omnicorp. Is there anything you would like to add?" Elias stood up, his voice calm and steady. Yes, I would like to add that I was unjustly terminated for attempting to raise concerns about Mr. Vance's reckless behavior. I have spent 12 years building my reputation at Omnicorp. I have consistently delivered results, and I have always acted in the best interests of the company. Mr. Vance, on the other hand, has done nothing but undermine my work, dismiss my expertise, and jeopardize the future of this company. He valued his own arrogance over the well-being of Omnicorp and its employees. Vance exploded. This is outrageous. These are lies. He's just a disgruntled employee trying to get revenge. Revenge? Elias countered, his voice rising slightly. No, Mr. Vance, this isn't about revenge. This is about justice. This is about holding you accountable for your actions. You came here with no experience, no understanding of this company, and no respect for the people who built it. You treated everyone with disdain, and you assumed that your family connections would protect you from the consequences of your incompetence. Well, you were wrong. The silence in the room was palpable. Everyone was staring at Vance, their faces a mixture of disbelief and disgust. Even his father's allies seemed to be distancing themselves from him. Marcus Bellwether cleared his throat. Mr. Vance, I think it's time for you to step down. Vance opened his mouth to protest, but no words came out. He looked defeated, broken, and utterly humiliated. He slowly stood up, his eyes filled with a mixture of rage and despair, and walked out of the room. As the door closed behind him, Marcus turned to Elias. Well, Mr. Thorne, he said with a smile, it seems Omnicorp is in need of a new VP of Operations. Are you interested? Resumo temático. Profissional exemplar é humilhado e injustamente demitido por novo líder arrogante, mas utiliza seu conhecimento e preparo prévio para orquestrar uma reviravolta que expõe a incompetência do novo líder e o leva a ascender a uma posição ainda maior. Interested? Elias echoed, the word hanging in the air. He glanced around the room, at the stunned faces of the executives, at the discarded documents scattered across the mahogany table. 12 years. 12 years he had dedicated to this company, only to be summarily dismissed by a man who knew nothing about its inner workings. And now, here he was, being offered the very position that had been used to justify his humiliation. He met Marcus Bellwether's gaze, a silent acknowledgement of the game they had played, the risks they had taken. He knew that Marcus wasn't offering him this position out of altruism. He saw Elias as an asset, a man who knew the company inside and out, a man who could be trusted to implement the changes Marcus envisioned. Yes, Mr. Bellwether, Elias said, his voice firm and resolute. I am interested. A collective sigh of relief swept through the room. The executives, realizing that the immediate crisis had passed, began to murmur amongst themselves, their faces a mixture of awe and apprehension. They had witnessed a coup, a silent revolution that had overthrown the arrogant reign of Julian Vance and replaced him with a man who had earned their respect. Marcus stood up, his presence commanding the room. Then it settled, he announced. Elias Thorne is the new VP of Operations for Omnicorp. I expect everyone to cooperate fully with him and to support his efforts to restore this company to its former glory. He turned to Elias, a hint of a smile playing on his lips. Congratulations, Mr. Thorne. I look forward to working with you. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of activity. Elias threw himself into his new role, working tirelessly to undo the damage Vance had inflicted. He reinstated the procedures Vance had dismantled. He rebuilt the relationships Vance had broken, and he reassured the employees Vance had demoralized. He listened to their concerns, he valued their opinions, and he empowered them to take ownership of their work. He also made sure to address the concerns of the client, who had been so unimpressed by Vance's presentation. He personally apologized for the debacle, he presented a revised strategy that addressed their needs, and he assured them that Omnicorp was committed to delivering exceptional results. The client, initially hesitant, was eventually won over by Elias's sincerity and his unwavering dedication to their satisfaction. Slowly but surely, Omnicorp began to recover. The company's performance improved, employee morale soared, and the client base grew. Elias had proven himself to be a capable and effective leader, a man who could inspire loyalty, drive innovation, and deliver results. One evening, as Elias was working late in his office, he received a visitor. It was Sarah, his former team member, the woman who had warned him about Vance's incompetence and who had secretly documented his disastrous decisions. Elias, she said, her voice filled with pride. I just wanted to say congratulations. You've done an amazing job. Everyone is so grateful for everything you've done. Elias smiled. Thank you, Sarah, but I couldn't have done it without you. Your loyalty and your dedication were invaluable. He paused, then added, I know you took a risk by documenting Vance's actions. I want you to know that I appreciate it more than you can imagine. Sarah shrugged. It was the right thing to do. I couldn't stand by and watch him ruin everything you had worked so hard to build. Elias looked at her, his eyes filled with gratitude. Sarah, he said, I have a proposition for you. I need someone I can trust to be my right hand, someone who knows the company inside and out, someone who is not afraid to speak their mind. I want you to be my chief of staff. Sarah's eyes widened in surprise. Really? You want me to be your chief of staff? Elias nodded. Yes, I can't think of anyone better for the job. Sarah smiled, a genuine heartfelt smile. I would be honored, Elias, absolutely honored. As Sarah left his office, Elias leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes. He had come full circle. He had been humiliated, dismissed, and discarded, but he had refused to be defeated. He had used his knowledge, his experience, and his unwavering determination to orchestrate a comeback that had not only exposed Vance's incompetence, but had also propelled him to a position of even greater power. He had proven that even in the face of injustice, even in the face of adversity, it is possible to rise above the challenges and achieve your goals. And he had done it all without sacrificing his integrity, without compromising his values, and without resorting to petty revenge. He had simply focused on doing what was right for the company, for the employees, and for the clients. And in the end, that was all that mattered. He opened his eyes and looked out the window at the city lights twinkling in the distance. He knew that the road ahead would not be easy. There would be new challenges, new obstacles, and new enemies to face, but he was ready. He had learned a valuable lesson about the importance of resilience, the power of perseverance, and the strength of the human spirit. And he knew that with the support of his team, he could overcome any obstacle and achieve any goal. He smiled, a confident, determined smile. He was Elias Thorne, the VP of Operations for Omnicorp, and he was ready to lead the company to a brighter future.